This makes it look like they're pretty clearly separated. But actually, how many colors are there? An infinite number of colors, really. And we're just kind of creating a model for ourselves, which we also know, by the way, is linguistically different. So if you go from one language to another, the way people see colors can be quite different. Interesting problem in reading the ancient Greeks, Homer. How many colors does Homer have in the Iliad? About 3. Yellow, black, red, and white, maybe. So 3. 4 colors. And you get weird things as a result, like the wine red sea. How many folks have ever seen the sea and thought it looked wine red? What kind of wine were they drinking, right? Long story short, it's kind of interesting when they really started discovering there's a problem here. This was about the time that Darwin had already convinced people in evolution, and what they began thinking was maybe the Greeks' eyes had not evolved to see all the colors that we see now. And, as if evolution would happen that quickly, if it would happen. In any case, so there's lots of disputes over, why are there only so few colors? And the answer I like best is that they weren't really using them as colors per se. They were instead talking about like the reflectability. Does that make sense? So when they talked about the wine red sea, they were talking about the way it sparkles. That wine sparkles and so does the sea. It's not really red, it's the sparkly nature of it, and so on. So all kinds of interesting things. But languages, definitely, one of my favorites is the Russians see 2 different colors that we think of as blue in both cases, Sini and I forget what the other one is. That's terrible. But in any case, now I'm going to be trying to think, where did my vocabulary go? But skip that. But yes, they definitely have different colors of blue, and people have been tested, and certainly they react to those differences much quicker than people that think of them as navy blue and aqua, or light blue, whatever, right? You're slower if you don't have the word that automatically gives you a difference, etc. Very, very small incremental differences, but nonetheless they're measurable. So we definitely have a linguistic difference in the way we break up the world, not just colors. That's just one example of the things that we're aware of. But the problem for Parmenides is, if you have an idea that explains why it is that our souls know a particular thing, and then you have another idea that explains why we know a horse, why we know a pumpkin, or a wine, or women, or whatever, right? You have to have the idea for every single other possible color that exists. Which means that there's an infinite number of colors that there are an infinite number of ideas for. That's a terrible system. What Plato's system was nice for was it gave you a very easy way to explain why it is that the ideas are what they are. And by the way, something Plato didn't even realize was he was focused on Greek. But he was really describing, even though he didn't know it, in our opinion today, not mine, but people I read, was he was viewing the world as a Greek speaker of the language of Greek of his day. So he was making the assumption that the word in Greek was the idea. And there was no alternative. That's the idea. So Parmenides brings up this problem of the infinitude of the ideas that are necessary for all the possibilities that are out there. Plus there are issues like the negative things. You know, if the ideas exist and we know them, and as a result we recognize things as participating in that idea, what about things like unicorns that don't really exist? How can I have an idea of a unicorn? And we all know what a unicorn is, although it's, I think, more complex today because now it is a mean for something that's what? I went to the urbandictionary.com, it would tell me something weird about unicorns today, right? It means something a little different than a horse-like creature with a single horn. There's other things that it means. Well, how can it do that? Does that mean that the ideal world actually has ideas of things that don't exist? Whoa, that's terrible, because the ideal world should be just all the things that do exist. Well, if this is how I know things that don't really exist, how do I explain it with this concept? It doesn't work. Right? So there's lots of issues that cause problems for the latter dialogues, and for the most part, it makes sense that what we're actually seeing too is Aristotle arriving on the scene. And who is Aristotle? Let's talk a little bit about him. How do you spell it? Aristotelian, but I just wanted Aristotle. How about that? No? There he is. Okay. I never wear my glasses and I can't really see without them, so that's kind of fun. So Aristotle. Literally, Aristoi is best, and telos, the second root, telos, means order or logic. The order, I suppose, would be, so Aristoi telos literally means the best organization or the best order. And what's he famous for? Organizing all of knowledge in the best possible way. I've never seen anything, anywhere that says his name really wasn't Aristotle, or that he was named that because of his works. But if you put the two of them together, there's a PhD there for somebody if you want to go and try to figure that out. Please, and email me when you do, because I want to read it. Notice that all the names have this same kind of association with what they're famous for. So I'm very puzzled about that. So 384, it's a guess, when he was born, 322. Why does the number go down? Everybody knows, right? Yeah. Don't you think that would have been hard to keep track of when you were a kid? Wait a minute. Well, of course, we've made this up, this whole system of BC years. I don't know what their actual way of counting the years were at the time. But, so 384, 322 BC. And as a teenager, his parents, who were both physicians, doctors, and they lived in Stagira, which is a town that's very near but not in Macedonia. And by the way, that's kind of fun too, because the Macedonians are different than the Greeks, and yet Aristotle's student is Alexander the Great. Alexandros, saver of men. Alexandros means saver, Alex, saver, and andropos, right? Men, right? So Philip of Macedonia is the father. Officially, on the paper it says Philip No, we don't have paper, right? But Philip is the father, and I think his mother was Olympia. Does it say? Anybody see? I'm pretty sure his mother was like Olympia. The story is that this is Alexander. I'm mixing people up. Well, we'll talk about Alexander later. But both of his parents were doctors, and they were the doctors that took care of Philip. So their connection, their network with Philip Macedon you'll see when he's old enough now to be a teacher, and Philip has a son named Alexander. Aristotle gets to be his tutor for 2 years, roughly, right? So that's the connection that we'll see later. But his parents died while he's a teenager, and so his uncle sends him to the Academy of Plato in Athens. And he spends roughly 20 years with Plato. It's kind of interesting. Plato spends about 20 years with Socrates, and Aristotle spends about 20 years with Plato. But Alexander, we only get roughly 2 years before he takes off and replaces his father and conquers the world, and cries when he gets to the mountains in Afghanistan because you can't go any further. Sorry, that's just fun. If you get into Alexander, I didn't mean to make you cry.
No, it's it's just gunk.
Okay, so Aristotle moves in to the academy, and obviously he's going to be a student for a while, but eventually become really spend 20 years, going to become really one of the most proficient. So when we look at the dialogues like the Parmenides, and maybe even the Sophists, I wonder if Aristotle might have been the student that was actually writing this. If you take a graduate record exam, don't say that, because that's probably wrong. But nonetheless, that's my thinking, right? A lot of the things I tell you are not going to help you pass one of those tests, because they're not the official variant on all of this. Remember, I'm old enough, I've been reading this stuff, I've got a lot of my own thoughts that I'd like to share, but who knows. So what does Aristotle do to try to answer the problem of knowledge? Well, first thing, he says the whole idea of ideas is bunk. I love the folks who believe in the ideas, but they're wrong. Very nice about it. And apparently it was kind of a appropriate behavior for him not to mention anybody by name. So he says those who love the ideas. He doesn't say Plato and his other followers. He just says those who love the ideas. That's how he refers to them when he criticizes them. But they're wrong about a great many things. Sorry, that sounds like the Emperor in Star Wars. And that totally threw me off. Where do I want to go? I want to go to where I started the other day. I showed you this a couple days ago, but we really didn't discuss it too much. By the way, the quiz question for today is send me a true sentence. What is a true sentence? Like, say for example, I did have, here it is. I have, what's it called, a pointer? And this in my pocket. And it works. I had the right direction. I also had a pen in my pocket. But is it true that I have a pancake in my pocket?
I mean, you might, but
I might. As a matter of fact,
Oh.
I did. I brought in a pancake just for this purpose.
What kind of pancake?
Homemade. It was kind of the end of one batch, and we had like one box that we just had a little bit left, and then I had another box that was brand new, and so I mixed them, and then I added corn. I like corn in my pancake. Delicious, actually. I didn't bring it in to give to anyone. I just brought it in because I thought, no one has ever done that before. No, it gets so boring talking about tables and chairs, which is what every single philosophy class talks about. These tables are real. And these are just that's, aha. But no one has ever used a pancake before. And so now, also demonstrates that Bill Jamison is silly. Wouldn't you say that's true? Well, seriously though, give me a true sentence. What kind of sentence would you offer as a true sentence?